Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast. Today's podcast, I thought about talking about communication.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've realised how big a topic it is.
There's a lot to talk about in communication.
A million ideas has swum through my head very quickly. Excuse me while I sneeze. And I don't know, it's like there's so many forms of communication.
There is.
And, there's the animals and communicating with animals, and then there's just communicating with other humans and our ability to communicate. And I don't know, there's a lot.
Where would you like to start?
Where would you like to start?
Honestly, my mind first place was with communicating with each other.
Yeah.
With people.
But let's start with a sort of an idea that popped into my head was, in those movies when they don't communicate well.
I hate those movies.
Me too. We both do. Where they either don't communicate, or they don't communicate well, or they don't just speak up for themselves.
It's all a misunderstanding.
And then there's this whole 3-hour nonsense of misunderstanding that if they just communicated, it wouldn't have been a thing.
Most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah.
But the laugh of that is that that's fairly close to real life.
Yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, it happens to all of us, I think,
Definitely.
So yeah, it's just that comes to mind because I hate. So I think I get called direct a bit because I don't. I can't think of the thing around the bushes.
Beat around the bushes?
Beat around the bushes. I'm very direct because I want people to understand me.
Yes.
But people are so used to, I think, sugarcoating everything that they find it a bit much.
I like communication that's direct and honest. I'm fairly thick-skinned, so I find it easy not to take offense to someone saying something if they don't say it very tactfully. And I'd much rather that and know where people stand than them try to say something but being tactful about it and then me not really understanding what they're talking about. That's just, I've not got time for that.
I know, I hate that. It's like sometimes when someone is beating around the bush.
It's like, just come out and say it.
Well, I'll just say to them, so what you're saying is this, and yeah. It's like, well, great, let's just get on with it then. Yeah. I just don't have time for it.
That's it. And it's an interesting one because I can see it from the other side. I can see some people really struggling with, especially, sort of low confidence, low self-esteem, somewhere in about there, and really struggling with very direct communication. Yeah. Especially if it's in a, not negative, but, in a, oh, can you not do that? Or I'd rather you did, if it's constructive criticism type thing, or it's not just a positive, you're wonderful statement, I can understand how people would struggle with that, and it would be better to soften it slightly.
Yeah. And
but still then you need to not lose the...
That's the funny thing is I'm quite direct, but I'm very sensitive to so when it's not sugarcoating, it can be a bit jarring and upsetting initially until you realise that it is what it is. But I don't know. This is the funniest thing about the communication podcast is, I don't know where I stand. I don't know where I stand.
Yeah, how you like your communication to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the person and their energy and the way they're being,
Well, that's it, because you can communicate directly in a very
loving, caring way,
or you can communicate directly in a very
almost aggressive,
assertive, not meaning it by any way like that, but communicate that way, and people can struggle with it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely harder to take it when it's in that form. Mm-hmm. I guess you just have to know your audience. You have to know if the person you're communicating can handle that sort of communication, or if they need something
shouldn't everything be said in a loving, caring way in some way or form?
Yes, but
but that's the thing is like because everyone gets emotional, so emotions come behind it, and then
they definitely do.
You know,
well, I remember hearing, and it's in like a management-y, training-y type thing. What was it they called it? The sandwich technique, where it's like you say something positive, you say what needs work, and then you say something positive. So you're sandwiching the criticism between two.
Well,
I'm not really interested in that, because then what is the bit in the middle is what you're wanting to say. Then you're trying to think of something random to say at the start, and
but when you're getting into that, I mean, beyond communication, is people really struggle with criticism.
Well, that's
it. I mean, I too, like you can't help but take it personally.
Oh yeah.
Whatever it is, even if it's to do with your job or the place you know, it's like it's amazing how much it can affect you. Criticism
can be hard, and my way of dealing with criticism, quite often I am aware of where the criticism's going to come, but I'm also aware of why at the time I made the decisions, did the thing, why I'm in that situation. So then the criticism can be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I'm aware, but I did that because of this. I may have been wrong, but I did it because of this, and now this is where I'm at. So, and I'm very much a forward-thinking person, so I'm not overly interested in criticism from past.
Yes, sorry, too late now.
Yeah.
If we'd done this, it would have been easier. Well, that's great. I mean, it is handier if that, you learned.
Oh, yeah, so you learned.
Yeah, okay, next time.
But it's like, you can think sometimes you do something and it doesn't work out the way you thought it would. And then someone's like, well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, really? Yeah. I kind of worked that out myself. But at the time, it seemed like a plausible solution to the problem.
It's like it comes down to a bit of confidence in yourself and your own ability. And I think if you do, like you said, you have low self-esteem, which is something that I can have quite often. The way things are said and what is being said can feel really painful sometimes.
Definitely. And if you're in that situation where you really struggle, you're a little bit out of your depth, you're not really sure what to do, and you try something and it doesn't work out, and then you're instantly hit with well, you shouldn't have done that. Then the next time you get to that situation, you might not try anything because you don't know what to do and you don't want to mess up, and then you get into this overthinking stage. And
I don't know what you're talking about there. I don't know anything about overthinking at all.
So that can be a bit of an issue as well. And at that point, you need to know your audience. You need to be more of the constructive criticism in the, okay, I see why you did that.
Yeah.
But this is the way you should have handled it.
That's you sandwiching it. So that's the interesting thing, is it doesn't need to be a compliment. It's just like an understanding. It's having the compassion to go, oh, I see why you did it this way. So not like you did it wrong.
It's the sandwich thing was explained to me with a compliment, criticism, compliment.
But if you think
I much prefer the understanding. Yeah. That I can see why you did that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think, to take it further, like in relationships and things, I think communication is key. Definitely. And I think it's something that's really helped us. And I think that's kind of what's helped us stay together a long time. Sometimes the communication isn't great, and sometimes it's very emotional, and it's like that, having that understanding and compassion of why reactions are happening, but also to communicate our way through things.
Yes, definitely. And I see relationships is a big one. Like, that's a big place where I see a lot of people not communicating. And I understand the difficulties in communicating in a relationship, because it's back to that sort of finding compromise with each other. And you might not want to, it's back to people pleasing and everything like that, advocating for yourself. You might not say something because you don't want the other person to be upset, or you don't want to hurt their feelings. And it's, but then if that's not something you can immediately let go of, if it's an ongoing irritation, then you have to say something, because otherwise you just get more and more irritated, and then you explode at something else that's not at all related to the thing that's actually Like, it's just...
It is, and it's hard as well if the other person is completely oblivious to the trauma that's going on inside of you over something, you know? And
that can be really bad, because you can be like, I can't believe they're not aware.
Then you start creating more stories about it, until you explode, and you say it in a way, like we're talking about how you communicate, you say it in a way that's really, really emotional and not helpful, because the other person's just like, wow, I just got blasted and I have no idea where all that came from.
Yeah. Whereas if at the very start you said, stop leaving your wet towel on the bathroom floor, then it would be fine.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I think it comes again into the awareness, like knowing if someone's your partner or your friend or your family, someone's struggling, and being able to say, is there something going on? Do we need to talk about something?
It's interesting, because one of the things that comes to me there is that it's definitely your responsibility to try and be aware of other people's, the way they are and how they're getting on. But it's also your responsibility to express to others how you feel.
Yeah.
And that can be this scary bit.
Yeah. I think, expressing yourself is... Well, for me, I find it quite challenging. Sometimes it's just because communicating into words what's going on in your head
is hard.
And then when you do, I realize how messed up my mind has got over something.
Yeah.
And then B is like, I fear that... you'll look at me different, like, oh my God, how messed up are you?
Don't worry, you have no idea what goes on in here.
It's like that fear of perception or being judged for like what you're expressing, definitely. I think, as well. So then you don't express it.
I think you hit something quite interesting there, that when you articulate something that's going on in your head that's sort of giving you trouble, quite often, once you put it into words, you're like, oh, that's a bit stupid,
quite actually. Often? You mean like every time when I say it to you and then I'm like, never mind.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's one of the great things about communicating, is you can communicate it and be like, oh, that's really stupid, actually. Carry on.
Yeah, and it's like, if you don't do anything to help deal with whatever is going on in your mind, it just builds.
It does.
And creates a bigger and bigger story with more and more emotion.
Yep.
And then it's just crazy.
That's the bad one, is when you start building on some small little thing that you're not communicating.
And I found, like, for me, I journal not as much as I could or should, because sometimes I don't, and then I say the thing to you, and I'm like, oh, if I journaled on this, I could have just written it down on paper and sort of worked my mind through it.
Yeah.
And then gone, okay, that's fine. That's just let that go. I think actually recently in my social media I did that about being afraid of my own feelings.
Yep.
And it was just something that came up when I was meditating, and I was like, wow, I'm afraid of it. And then I was like, why am I afraid of my own feelings? And then I wrote a load of stuff, and I was like, that is so muddled up in my mind. How did I get that all misconnected in a way that just wasn't true or helpful?
I mean, that comes down to the subconscious. The subconscious, as great as it is and as amazing as your subconscious can be, it's not the most critical or intelligent of thinkers.
No.
So that's where the taking it from the subconscious into the critical mind helps, by saying it out loud, by journaling it, by communicating it. Then you're able to almost communicate it to yourself.
Yeah, it's just like you sometimes become my sounding board.
Yeah, that's it.
And sometimes I'm like, am I crazy, or is this like? And then I'd say it, and I'm like, no, never. It's literally, I'm like,
I don't even need to say it.
you just stand there and be like,
Yep, okay.
And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Never, thank you for your time. And I will just reconnect that in a more positive way, because that's just silly, and carry on.
Yeah.
But that's where the journaling has really helped, and I actually would like to get back into doing it better, because there was I can't remember it, but it was a creative journaling thing where you just wrote 3 pages every day.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what you wrote.
Yeah.
And quite often, it was a woman who'd written the book that I read. I can't remember it. It's bad. You can only write about the same problem so many times until you've had enough of it and you turn it around and move it forward.
Yeah.
So even though it feels like it's keeping you stuck because you're writing the same stuff, it actually ends up just you work it all out in your mind eventually. Yeah. So sometimes it can take a few days, and sometimes it's the second page of the 3 pages where it's like, oh, okay. And that's that kind of sorted in my mind, and I carry on, or I know the steps I can take to help sort it, you know.
It's interesting where our communication's gone to self-communication.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think some of it is learning about how you communicate with yourself before you communicate with others.
Definitely.
And where communication can take you.
Yeah, and I think the important part of it is sometimes you need to communicate the thing to yourself before you communicate it to others so that you know
how it feels,
and you know, it's almost like you know what you're going to say, but it's that you understand it fully rather than just communicating sort of in the spur of the moment.
With the emotions.
Yeah. Especially if it's something that the other person could struggle with.
But isn't it interesting as well that, you know, communication, we're talking about how you communicate by speaking. But like we're saying, like there's so many more forms of communication. You've got body language, you've got energy, you've got
actions,
you know, and there's people that don't speak, that can't hear, you know, and like there's just so much more to communication than just what you say and how you say it.
Oh, definitely.
But if you can speak and hear, you know, that's a really important part of communication is what you say and how you say it.
Yeah. And being congruent with the way you are. Because you'll get that with people. Yeah. You'll get people who will say something and you'll be like, I don't really feel like you mean that.
Yeah,
like,
your energy's not really aligning with what you're saying there.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think highly sensitive people especially really feel that. And then people that are just more in tune to reading people is how I tend to put it, can pick that up so quick. And yeah, it's I don't know, it's really interesting.
It is. And yeah, communication is one of those strange ones. The fear of how other people will respond to it, how people will look at you if you communicate it.
And the challenge is like everyone's different.
Oh, definitely.
So everyone you speak to has a different way of reading and taking in information and communication. So it's like you can't even say, well, this is the best way to do it.
Not at all.
It's just being able to communicate in some way that is...
And you need to get to know someone quite well to fully understand how to effectively communicate with them. Because like you and me, we can communicate really easily with incomplete sentences or words or ideas. Or a nod or just a look, whatever.
Yeah.
And I see this at work a lot because the manager and I, we talk about things and we know where the other person's going with it. So it's like, oh yeah, and then we can do this. And then the third person at the table's like, what? Like, you'll come out and they'll think something completely different to what the rest of us were thinking because we're kind of almost communicating in a shorthand.
And it's that as well, like you said, that's the sort of taking time. So it's like getting to know how the other person really thinks and works things out. Because that's it as well, you know, it's like knowing how to say things so they work out because their brain works differently, how they work through things differently. It's just like... And
again, switching it around, that it's important when someone communicates something to you and you have no idea. It's okay to say, what?
Huh? Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Have the confidence to ask, I'm sorry, what? And even though you may feel like it makes you look really stupid, it doesn't. Like, you're better knowing than doing it in the way that wasn't expected and then just being a complete mess, you know?
I'd much rather deal with someone who said, I don't understand, than someone who tried to muddle through.
Well, it's even like, you know, when I talk about a problem to you and you can be, I don't understand how that's a problem, because to you, your brain's gone, that's not an issue. Yeah. You know, I don't really understand how that's a problem, but let's see if we can help you to figure out what's going on, you know.
But sorry, my favourite one for you is just why.
Why, yeah. You're like a kid.
Why?
You're like my nephews. When my nephews come, it was constantly like, why, Auntie Janet? Why? Yeah. But I said, that's fine. Why's good, because it's good to ask those questions. But the important question is how, because that moves you forward. So it's good to understand why things are.
Yeah.
But how moves you forward. So, like, ask some whys, but then ask some hows.
Oh, definitely.
So how do I move forwards from this? How do I get out of this situation? How do I figure this out, you know?
The important thing with the asking the whys is that if you ask enough whys, you kind of get to...
you get shouted at and I'm done.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's finished.
You get to the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
No, if you ask enough whys, you kind of come back to the real root.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, I feel this. Okay, why? Because of this.
Yeah.
Why? Because of this. Because of this.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Yeah.
And then it's, because of this. Okay, how do we move forward from that?
Yeah. That's really funny, because you can't help but keep going back to internal communication. So how do you communicate to yourself?
That's it. But sometimes it helps to have someone else to help you. I mean, it's therapy.
Yeah.
How to have someone else help you communicate with yourself.
It's like that great, there was a meme or a picture or whatever, and it's someone with a thought bubble with a big mess of wool, and then it's connected to the therapist or person who's sitting with them, and they're rolling the wool that's all a mess into a ball of wool.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
and it's like helping to sort out the thoughts so that it clears it. Yeah. So
definitely communicating helps like that.
Yeah.
And even like you say, when you're struggling with things, because I think when things are great, communication's usually quite good too.
Yeah. When
you're struggling, communication tends to suffer. And just having those people around you that you can communicate incoherently to, that can help you, like you say, untangle it.
Yeah.
Even if they just sit there and listen.
Yeah.
It's like the having a rant. You know, everyone likes to at some point have a rant.
Yeah.
And the person on the receiving end of the rant doesn't really need to do anything other than nod and I get that.
Just needs to listen.
Needs to listen. And then once the rant's over with, the person's usually like, okay, right, we're done.
And it's really interesting because I really liked the thing that I saw was it's good to ask someone, have you got time for me to
rant?
Have a wee rant, you know? And then people can, it's like that, being able to set boundaries, be like, oh no, I don't think I could cope with that right now. And I don't think there's many people that would say no, but giving people a chance to actually say, no, look, you're going to have to rant to someone else or something else because I can't take that right now, you know?
There's a good communication bit for you.
Mm-hmm. That's advocating for yourself and boundaries.
That's a difficult communication to have.
Oh, yeah.
That's someone coming to you and saying, I need this, and you saying, I can't give that to you at the moment.
Yeah. And that's a hard one. It is hard, but that's where, for me, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
Because I always want to help. And I don't always have the capacity to help, but I'll always try and help. But it's like, you know, maybe if they'd gone to someone else who was in a better capacity to help,
they would have got a better
They would be feeling even better, you know.
But it's definitely one of the communications I struggle with is that, you know, I will always, no problem. Yep. Yeah. I can handle that.
Yeah.
And
then I'm like, are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine.
I've just got all this stuff to handle now.
Oh, just like that is that Friends thing, isn't it, with Ross?
Yes.
I'm fine, you know? And I'm fine is one of those things where I know there's a problem when someone says that I'm fine. Because people only say that when they're not fine.
Yeah, they do, but equally, like, I can be, you know, overwhelmed's not the right word, but, you know, let's use it because I can't think of a better word, but overwhelmed with a pile of things and a bit flustered, and it's not easy, it's not plain sailing, it's a struggle. But I know I'll get to the end of it and then I'll be like, oh, okay, there we go, that's good.
But you also don't need to suffer your way to the end. So, like, if you communicated, well, I've been struggling a bit with this and I've got a lot of, and actually just communicated your way through it, it might just release the energy of what is making it feeling overwhelming.
Yes.
That you won't struggle all the way to the end as well. It's like that, again, it's that understanding that a little bit of communication, that sort of expressing.
Mm-hmm.
And, perhaps you express on a bit of paper, I don't really care. But, just like understanding that you don't have to suffer to the end of something. Once I'm here, everything will be fine. And that can be the worst way to live.
I don't really think of it as suffering.
No, but you are, because like I can tell you.
It's hard work.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's like it can feel harder because you feel like you've got a mountain to climb to get to the end to it.
Yeah.
And it's just understanding that sometimes communicating and sharing what's going on just helps that mountain feel like a little molehill, and then it's just not as overwhelming, and you can make it to the end. And
sometimes it's nice to climb a mountain.
I know, and it's good too. But you don't have to do it alone.
True. Very true.
Yeah. And overwhelm is one of the hardest things to communicate. When you're feeling overwhelmed, it's just like I can't even say it because I'm just so overwhelmed.
Also, it's another one of those that brings you back into are people going to judge me because I say I'm overwhelmed?
Yeah. And, overwhelmed doesn't necessarily mean the amount of jobs you've got to do. That can be like just... So I'll quite often... we'll go food shopping or something like that, and I'm getting halfway around and I start getting a bit narky. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just really overwhelmed. And that's bright lights, lots of people, decisions to be made, just smells, sounds. It's just like, I get some days, no problem. Do shopping, no problem. Other days I can get a little bit around the store. I'm done. I'll just say to you, I'm done. I'm sorry, I'm done, but we're going to keep going. But this is the state I'm in now. We're just gonna have to make our way.
But again, that's the thing, and that's communicating, and then communicating sometimes, especially when you're a relationship or family or things like that. Okay, I just need some quiet time now. I need to go and sit in a room on my own and shoot.
Yeah, and it's like we said, it's like advocating for yourself. You need to use communication to do that.
Yes.
And if you don't do that, then you don't advocate for yourself.
Yep.
And then, and then the overwhelm becomes, because what I feel is when I notice that I'm getting overwhelmed is the emotions. The emotions start, I'll get a bit grumpy, and then I'm getting like grumpy with you and a bit short with you. And then I realize, okay, that, because I don't ever want to feel like that with you. So what is it that's making me feel like that? Okay, that's just because of everything else.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I'll communicate with you. Sorry. Is this over with yet?
The funniest thing about that, that's the point when no communication is quite good on my part. Because sometimes you'll be narky with me, and I know it's not about me. It's just something else that's... But to turn around and go, hey, don't be narky to me.
No, but if you turn around and
communication.
Are you okay? Yeah. Which sometimes elicits a little bit of a narky, but it'll be like, no, I'm not okay, sorry, it's just, it's like, it's suddenly just being able to say, no, I'm not okay, allows me to go, oh, and I know why. Yeah. We're good, let's carry on. And then I'm not narky then. It's like, okay, right, yeah. And it's if you don't notice, you don't understand how you're feeling, then that's when the communication can come out in a very emotional way, and in a way you'd never want to communicate to your friends, family, or partner with,
And that can be one of the hard ones, is when something else is bothering you, and then you're communicating with someone completely removed from that, but you end up communicating in a way that's in the energy of the other problem, and that's to do with other people and others. That can be a difficult one to try and separate.
I don't think I think, so for me, I feel like yeah, you want to separate it. But I think it's because you haven't released the energy from...
Definitely.
And you don't need to hold on to that.
You don't need to hold on to it. But it might be an ongoing thing, yes. And we're not all perfect. So
well, it's like that thing, I've been anxious about my work visa coming in and then getting my driving license sorted for the millionth time. And it's just a whole thing. We're not going to go into it. But like that has sat as an anxious thing all summer because I've been dealing with it all summer waiting.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it gets to the surface.
Definitely.
And then makes me struggle more with other things. And then the communication comes out in a way that's not the way I'd like it to. So,
yes.
Yeah. And that can happen randomly all over the place. And it's just because it's just sitting there.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the thing is, it can be hard to communicate without holding on to that and bringing that into completely unrelated topics.
Totally. And it's like, what it can be is like something unrelated triggered you to think about it. So then it comes to the surface. Then you're just like in the energy of that instead of where you're at. So it's,
communication is difficult.
It is. It really is. Yeah, it's something that I've not mastered greatly, but
I don't think you can master communication.
No, I think...
I know there are people who are better communicators than others, but I think everyone, even the best communicators in the world, have difficult times communicating their thoughts and ideas.
I think, I'm just trying to sort of sum up what I think helps, and I think it's helpful to be aware of how you're feeling.
I think you're right.
Know what's going on with you and know when you're feeling emotions and feel like the emotions are coming out in the words in a situation where you feel like, I don't really need that emotion to be there. It's
definitely.
just to just
the one that comes to mind there is I've heard a few people speak who have had people react negatively to the things that they've said. So I'm specifically thinking of sort of famous-y type people like Jordan Peterson, Joe Dispenza.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them, they sort of said things that were outside of the norm, and colleagues and peers reacted negatively to it. But they're fixed in their beliefs, which is great. But it made them angry that people wouldn't accept, and people wouldn't even say, well, that's fine, that's your belief. People were like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Which really made them angry, which then when you listen to them talking, as they get into it, that anger comes through and they start to get really annoyed because they don't understand why people can't accept that this is their point of view. And they lose something, I think, in their communication because they're angry. Whereas...
And I think it again, it's like you come there with anger, like more anger comes back at you.
Definitely.
Like it creates that vibration to
whereas the ability to communicate with yourself, okay, well, I'm starting to get angry about this because of this. I understand why. Or but even communicating that to other people.
Using anger to fuel your passion's great.
Definitely.
But again, when you're communicating your passion, don't really want it to come out as anger. And I've felt it myself sometimes, it's really hard not to, feel that come through, but it's like understanding you can communicate it better if it's not coming from the place of like, I don't know.
Or even to communicate, I'm feeling this because this.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
Yeah. And letting it go.
That can help to let it go, but even if it doesn't, it helps to let the person you're communicating to understand where you're coming from. Yeah,
because we have that ability, because we read people quite well, and I'm highly sensitive, is really noticing the emotions and the feelings that come with the words they're saying. So like getting the fuller picture, and then, to us it can mar what we're receiving.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It is.
Yeah, we have no answers, but there's not meant to be answers. I think it was more about, it's a good conversation to have about communicating about communicating.
It's a good communication to have.
Yeah, it really is. It's just interesting to be more aware of how we're communicating, or just like understanding where people come when they're communicating, come from when they're communicating.
I think understanding yourself and where you're coming from when you communicate helps you to then put it into the other person. Okay, they're maybe being like that because of like this, because once I was like that because of this. And it helps you just to understand communication better.
Yeah.
But the big one, I think, is communicate. Don't be in that movie where you spend 3 hours misunderstanding because I thought this, but no, that didn't happen. But I'm not going to tell you that.
And instead, I'm just going to run away and not say anything.
Yeah, I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to have a tantrum.
Or there's that thing where people won't let the other person speak their side of the story. No, I don't want to hear it. You ruined my life, and then walk away. It's like, no, you need to have...
That's part of communication we didn't talk about, listening.
Yes, you need to have that thing where you do listen, but that's the hard part sometimes. Yeah. Listening to someone else's story when you are feeling so hurt can be really hard.
Definitely.
Yeah. There we are then. I think we'll stop there with our communicating.
Seems like a good place to stop.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.